Hey yo, what is happening guys? This is himalnaruto coming at you with another video. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Final Fantasy 8. So that hence the reason why I'm using Squall. But besides that, I just have to let you guys know that with Square Enix actually remastering and as well as the remake for the Final Fantasy 7, as well as that they ported it, you have to ask yourself, you think they're gonna remaster, remake, or port the Final Fantasy 8 to the PS4, or do you think they won't do that? I'm not too sure, but do remember that Final Fantasy 7 is the second best selling PlayStation video game of all time with over 9 almost 10 million sales. So that's amazing to think about. And also the fact that Final Fantasy 7 is getting its own remake. However, the Final Fantasy 7 from the PlayStation 1 has been ported to the PlayStation 4. This is my background, as well as don't forget Final Fantasy 9, because that game was also ported to the PS4. You can see right here, you can buy it. But the question is, what is in store for the 7th best selling PlayStation video game of all time, that being Final Fantasy 8. Within one interview, Katano added the several Final Fantasy titles from the PlayStation 1 era will likely be made as a remakes rather than the HD remasters versions. With that said, it seems that the reception of the Final Fantasy VII Remake announced during E3 2015 was forced for Square to rethink its approach, the 6th, 8th and 9th installment in the Final Fantasy franchise. But of course, what does that mean for Final Fantasy 8? Do you guys think that there should be a remaster or a remake for the Final Fantasy 8? But honestly, I would actually think that it would be something in the same light as Final Fantasy 7. Final Fantasy 7, being one of the most famous Final Fantasies, is getting a remake, as well as the original was ported to the PlayStation 4. And however, even though this is something huge, it has also been ported to the PlayStation 3. The Final Fantasy 7 was ported to the PlayStation 4, PSP and PlayStation 3, but also Final Fantasy 8 was ported to PlayStation 3, and also numbered titles that were remastered for the PS4 being Final Fantasy 12, Zodiac Age, and Final Fantasy 10/10-2. So you have to actually wonder, is there going to be a cycle, because they remastered, you can say they ported Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 9, so they kind of skipped the Final Fantasy 8 aspect. And honestly, I think they are planning something huge for Final Fantasy 8, because if you think about it, they didn't actually port Final Fantasy 6 and before Final Fantasy 6, they actually ported video games from Final Fantasy 7, skipped 8, then 9 and 10, skipped 11, then there's 12, Final Fantasy 13, currently on the PlayStation 3. Don't know if that's ever gonna get ported, but you know what? It seems recent enough, so I'm gonna make that a no. And then there's Final Fantasy 14, which is on the PlayStation 4. And then there's Final Fantasy 15. So if you have to think about it, there's just a little to very little entries within the Final Fantasy industry that is not even on the PlayStation 4 yet. But if we had to read this little article right here, they have said that, and I quote, "It's also worth in that if Square Enix is only concerned in remakes from the PlayStation 1 era Final Fantasy, there are only two options given the Final Fantasy 7 remake is already in development. Could we see a trilogy remake of chronology with the Final Fantasy 8 remake and get announced in the future with a Final Fantasy 9 remake to follow?" Katano comments, "At least seems to confirm a theory many fans have speculated since the 30th anniversary celebration begun. Some industry insiders seem to believe a collection of Final Fantasy titles would be remastered and released together to celebrate the franchise's storied history, and while that's still possible, it would seem that Square Enix is considering revisiting Final Fantasy's past in a much different and perhaps much more exciting way." But then we continue on to another article I found connected to this. It said here, Katano interview, which conducted by International Business Times, seems to suggest Square Enix has been considering more Final Fantasy remakes outside already announced the Final Fantasy 7 remake which with the Final Fantasy 30th anniversary celebration is full swing. It would make sense that Square Enix to consider revisiting other iconic entries in the series with full-on remakes, with games like Final Fantasy 8, 6 and 9 all strong contenders that have incredible devoted fans. And that is true, because if they had to actually do this and make a chronological trilogy, it would be amazing to see that they make not only the Final Fantasy 7 remake, but possibly even the Final Fantasy 8 remake, or even a Final Fantasy 6 remake and Final Fantasy 9 remake. And maybe they'll remake all of the Final Fantasies, who knows, but let's take it a few steps at a time. And honestly, I think this is a great business perspective if they had to actually remake the Final Fantasy 8, because there's a lot of new generation video gamers and they don't know about Final Fantasy 8, or not as much as they used to when it first came out. So if they had to actually make a remake of it, it could introduce more people to the series, something similar to how the Final Fantasy 7 remake is doing. But recent entry titles such as Final Fantasy 15, video games like Final Fantasy 15 brought many people to Final Fantasy, the franchise, as well as the community. But you have to also wonder, if a Final Fantasy 8 remake happens, do you think it'll bring more people in, or do you think it'll actually keep the old people in? But I know a Final Fantasy 7 remake, there's a lot of people excited for it. I am personally also excited for it, and the fact that it's going to definitely bring in a lot of new people, cause the graphics look amazing and all of that, spiking up in all the high definition and all of that. Please, you have to actually realize that I think that Final Fantasy 8 with the technology now could be a awesome video game. The Final Fantasy 7 remake is getting a lot of hype, so imagine how much of hype the Final Fantasy 8 will get if they ever do decide to remake it. But let's be real for a sec. Do you guys think that there is something up Square Enix's sleeve for not putting the Final Fantasy 8 port on the PlayStation 4? Do you think they're gonna make a remake, or do you think they should remaster it, or should there be neither of it? Remake, master, or should they just leave Final Fantasy 8 where it belongs, on the PlayStation 3, on the Windows, on the PlayStation 1, all of that good stuff? Anyway guys, that is it for this video. Please do leave a like, helps me out a lot. Comment down in the comment section down below, do you want a remake or a remaster, or should they just let Final Fantasy 8 be? And share with friends, because sharing is caring, and most importantly, subscribe to become a fellow lightning bolt. Anyway guys, that is it for this video, and as always, this is Himalnaruto. Blaze out.